So it's a true pleasure to be here today, and it's so nice to see so many joining this Lilla lördag. It's nice when it's Wednesday to kind of pretend it's Saturday, right? The sun is shining and the mood is good. So thank you, Natasha, for that introduction. Oncopeptides has for sure been through I'm not sure if we have been through the pain of staying the same, but we have been changing a lot. And the purpose of this session is really to give you an idea, a short background of our history, where we are today and where we are heading into the future. And we only have around 15 minutes, so I will try to stay quite kind of focus and move with speed, but please raise any questions you may have during the talk or afterwards, of course. So who are we then? We are a small biotech. We call ourselves global because we do operate across the globe through partnerships. We are focused on both commercializing, so we are selling our first drug in Europe, but also research and development. The company was founded back in 2000. I will share a bit more about the history because we've been here for 26 years and a lot has happened. We are today around 70 employees at Oncopeptides, and then, as I said, we're operating with partners in other geographies. Our headquarters is in the city center of Stockholm. We have been growing across Europe, where we are commercializing ourselves in Germany, Austria, Spain, Italy, and then we have a partner in Greece. We got a full approval for our very first peptide drug conjugate, which is the foundation of the company, back in 2022. And I will tell you a bit more about the journey of our launch, but also how we are advancing the science around the peptide drug conjugates. In addition to that platform, we also have an NK cell engager platform called the Spikes platform, which is a very different type of platform that is targeting both cancer but could also target autoimmune disease. So looking at the history of the company, it was founded around the peptide drug conjugates, which I think is a very, very clever innovation, and it's actually why I decided to join Oncopeptides when I was at AstraZeneca for many, many years. You will get an understanding of the mode of action that I think it's brilliant, and it's really supporting patients. It has been a journey to get there into the market to support patients. Obviously, a lot of preclinical research, collaborations. So the company has all the time, and we are still very focused on partnerships, both in research and out in the market. They signed a strategic collaboration with Dana-Farber Harvard that has played a big role, as we got a lot of external input into our clinical development program that kicked off around 2012. And then we stayed in clinic for many years. There was a comprehensive clinic development program and a very, I think, thought through plan on how to launch the first peptide drug conjugate for multiple myeloma patients. When I joined back in 2020, I joined to prepare the launch in the US, start to look at Europe. We actually got an accelerated approval in the US in 2021, and we started to sell, and the need was confirmed. So a very good start. But then we got our confirmatory phase 3 trial that did not, according to the FDA, confirm the phase 2 data, as we had a subgroup finding. So at that time point, the company went through the pain of having to change tremendously. So we had to basically close our US business unit, close down almost everything in Europe, and we went from around 350 employees to 35. And then we were scratching our head and saying, what are we going to do now? And we decided to continue the European regulatory process. And in 2022, we got the full approval from EMA, as they had a chance to not, the regulatory process was more to look at all of the data and conclude a full approval, then confirm an accelerated approval. Because it is very clear when you look at our data that our peptide drug conjugates are working and can support patients. So the last couple of years, we basically built the company from our European commercialization journey, and we have also been advancing our research in preclinic. And I will now tell you where we stand today. So if you just look at some numbers, we have been launching in our key markets the last couple of years. As you all probably know, it's quite a process to negotiate prices in Europe. It takes time. But we have entered, as I said, Germany, Spain, Italy, the 3 largest markets according to our plan. And we have seen a healthy growth if we look at the year-over-year growth of 125%. So we are building from the launch of Pepaxti, which is the name of our first peptide conjugate in Europe. We are adding the opportunity for patients around the world to get Pepaxti through partnerships. And we do have 2 platforms in our pipeline, and today I will focus on what we have decided to prioritize, which is the peptide drug conjugate platform. If anyone has any questions or is here because you have seen we have a spikes platform with small kind of affibodies, bispecific affibodies, then just grab me and I can tell you more about that. I'm not going to focus in on that as we only have 15 minutes today. So, I said I've joined the company because I thought the innovation was very clever. I also joined the company because I thought the people were great at Oncopeptides, and that is important to succeed. But the whole idea behind the peptide drug conjugates is to to be able to treat aggressive tumor types with chemotherapy or alkylating agents without too many side effects. And the peptide drug conjugates are peptides conjugated to an alkylating agent, making the compound very lipophilic. This means that it very rapidly diffuses into the cell, so there is no need for a receptor. So this is the first way of overcoming resistance. So it gets into all of the cells in the body because of the lipophilicity. Inside of the cells, it's cleaved by aminopeptidases and esterases, and these are upgraded in certain tumor types. The hydrolyzation is happening very, very fast. So now we have a high concentration of hydrophilic alkylating agent that is active, and that can easily then get into the nucleus of the cell and damage the DNA and put the cell into apoptosis. What we have realized in clinic, and we've saw that in our clinical studies, but we also see it in case series and case reports now when we're out in the market, is that we are able to support the most hopeless cases, that patients that are really resistant to alkylators, to everything. And we've been asking ourselves, why is this? Is this only because of this clever mechanism of action that we get such a high concentration inside of the tumor cell? Because in multiple myeloma you have this upgrade of aminopeptidases and esterases. Or is there something else to it? And what we have realized through preclinical research is that we are actually also equipotent damaging the DNA in the mitochondria. And as some of you may know, if you're into this field, to damage the mitochondria can of course be very harmful if you damage all the mitochondria in the body. But if you can be very specific and targeted to the tumor types, which we are based on a mechanism of action, it can be very powerful. So based on this finding, and then in parallel we've been looking into different tumor types, we have realized that we have a great opportunity to also address other aggressive tumor types, such as glioblastoma, which has been a hopeless disease to develop drugs for. So if we look kind of a summary of our PDC platform, we believe, based on this dual mechanism of action, that we're actually looking at a scientific breakthrough, because we have now a platform that can really complement all the fantastic immunotherapy that is developed for cancer. We complement by overcoming treatment resistance, both resistance to kind of conventional chemotherapy, but also when immune therapy is not working. And we have proven ourselves in the real world. So we now have more than 600 patients treated with multiple myeloma, which is a rare disease. And all the real world data that has been published has kind of been showing greater effectiveness. Obviously, it's not randomized controlled trials, but greater effectiveness in real life. And the tolerability profile is really confirmed, given that as the hypothesis was to provide chemotherapy that is aggressive but spare the healthy cells, seems to really be working. The patients don't feel the side effects, basically. It's mainly cytopenias that hematologists can manage. So with we are launching still, and the majority of the efforts at Oncopeptides today is to continue to grow sales in Europe, but with our preclinical research we have decided to take also the step beyond myeloma, and I will tell you much more about that in a short while. But if we just look at, because it's always interesting, of course, to understand how do you commercialize. I mean, the target for Oncopeptides was US. That was the great and promising market. We lost it. Such is life sometimes. That was very, very painful. But we looked at the opportunities and said, okay, let's look at our data. We have subgroup data. It's not optimal for the payer systems in Europe, but let's look at our data and see what we can do with it and which markets we believe where we can kind of negotiate a price that is reflecting the innovation of our drug. And my history is coming from AstraZeneca, and when I was there, I was working or overseeing 20 launches. So I had quite a vast experience of kind of launching drugs and market access and medical affairs. So that's probably why I'm standing here today, to be honest. But we set the target to get into Germany, Austria, Spain, and Italy as the first and second phase, and we did so. Because that is where the payer systems are suited for our type of data. We will continue to work to get into UK and France and Central Eastern Europe, but we are not certain if we are going to do it or if someone with more solid finances and a portfolio that can support those launches, because the price levels will be lower, should do it instead. So we are assessing those markets. But today I'm proud to be able to share that all those orange dots are actually a sign of how we are supporting patients, and we now have full access to all these 3 countries as we've been through both the national and the regional processes. Looking at the rest of the world, there are patients in need. We are also a very small company, and I've alluded to it. We are very fond of collaboration. So what we have done is that we have assessed and said, okay, Japan is a promising market. They have an old population. They have a fair incidence of multiple myeloma. We have been talking to regulatory authorities. They have said, yes, if you do a bridging study, you can get approved. We have been speaking to the experts, and they say, yes, there is a need to complement immunotherapy. And based on that, we have then entered partnership discussions for Japan. In South Korea, we actually had a partner coming to us, because there we have experts that has been part of our studies, and they were very keen to get Pepaxti. So we have a licensing deal in place in South Korea. The rest of the world, we have actually signed a contract with the World Orphan Drug Alliance for them to explore whether there is an opportunity in the more complex geographies. And that is just to ensure that we do what we can to ensure that patients can get access to our peptide drug conjugate platform. I can see that time is running, so I will move a bit with speed. As I said, we have 2 platforms, and from those platforms we have 3 assets that are close to clinic. So OPD5, OPDC3, 2 peptide drug conjugates, and then OPSP1 from our spikes platform. And if we look at our next steps, so many of you probably know glioblastoma. It's the most common brain tumor. It's very aggressive, it's rare, but extremely severe. And it has been very difficult to develop drugs for this tumor because it's a very clever tumor. Poor survival, so the prognosis is around a year or a bit more for patients who get glioblastoma. And the barriers, it's always important to look at, like why do we not succeed as an industry and academia to develop drugs for these patients? And that's because it's a very sturdy tumor. Sometimes I simplify and say the brain is clever, this tumor is super clever. It just finds its ways, and the resistance is developed really rapidly. Many of the patients do not even get efficacy from the standard treatment that is available. But we do know that alkylating agents works because that is the standard treatment today. We do know that it's important to cross the blood-brain barrier as a first step. So you need to have an innovation that has the chance to do that. We also know it's a cold tumor, so there is little efficacy if you just try to get an antibody into the brain. So temozolomide, it's a generic drug that is the standard of care together with radiation and surgery today, and it's an alkylator, so we know that alkylators actually do work for some of the patients. It has a limited drug distribution. If we look into the bioavailability in preclinic, we can see it's around 30%. The result is so and so because there is a rapid resistance development, as I said, and obviously it works because it doesn't need any immune cells. So our answer, and this is, I'm pointing out the collaboration piece because I know all of you are coming from different parts of the ecosystem, and I think we should really fuel that. So back in 2020, we got a knock on our door from a professor at Akademiska who said, I've been looking into glioblastoma cells and it looks as if your PDCs have a very strong tumor reduction or really affect the viability of the cells. And we said, we were kind of focusing on multiple myeloma, but all science is interesting. So we said, publish the data and let's look at it. And based on the published data, we, together with the consortium, applied for a grant from Vinnova and we got it. So this project has been funded in preclinic from the Swedish Innovation Agency, basically. And this is the data. So you have the viability. So the lower the dots are, the better killing you see of the cells. And the yellow box is our PDC. And then we have a red box, which is standard of care. And what should be noted here is that obviously you have to get through the blood-brain barrier first, and then you can see this killing. So all the kind of assets here will not be possible to develop because some of them are not crossing the blood-brain barrier. But she said you should cross the blood-brain barrier because you are so lipophilic. And so we have all reasons to believe that we can make a difference for these patients, because also when we look in animal models, we do see a strong tumor reduction. We do see 100% bioavailability between the plasma and the brain. We know, based on our dual mechanism of action, that we do have a good shot on resistant tumors, and obviously we don't need any immune cells. So the next steps for us, in addition to focusing on our commercialization in Europe and continue to make a difference every day for patients with multiple myeloma, is really to move into glioblastoma. And then you need to ask yourselves, and you need to ask people outside of the company, how do we do this? Because it's a graveyard, and who would want to invest hundreds of millions in a glioblastoma program when no one ever succeeds, right? So the first step that we have decided to take, and this is in very close collaboration with all the kind of top experts within the field, is to look at if we penetrate or if we cross the blood-brain barrier in glioblastoma patients. So we are doing a window opportunity study that we just got a fast track for from Noma, because we decided to do it in Nordics together with Oslo, as they have a very well-functioning system there and a kind of large population that they get patients from. So we are basically then looking at infusing a PDC into the patient ahead of surgery, and then looking at, did we reach the tumor and can we see DNA damage? So that's the first step we are taking and hope to get positive results to be able to progress. So by that, a few more minutes probably than I should have been talking. Yes, I'm closing and opening up for questions.